Hi, my name is Daryl Phillips, owner of Noir Apologia Gaming, and today we're going to be discussing third ingredient, taking advice. Like, subscribe, share, follow. All the links are below. Hit the bell for notifications in case you want to know when I have the next video out. Go to bipolarize.net if you want to know and understand what we're trying to do here. There's a donate button on there. It's a $1 minimum. Just goes to bills. It's a work in progress, just like I am, just like we all are.
So taking advice is not an easy thing. First, you have to admit that you don't know everything. You have to admit that you need help. It's one of those things where until you've had enough of banging your head against a wall, you're just going to keep making the same mistakes. But if you get someone who really knows how to guide you, there's a difference between talking at a person and talking with a person. A lot of people do not get that one down. And the reason being is because they think they're the boss now, because you've asked for help. Guide them. Don't just teach them words. Guide them. Point out things that they do good, but also point out things that they need to correct. And that's from the advisor's perspective. And the person getting the advice, you have to be patient with yourself. It's very frustrating when someone's giving you advice and you don't quite understand. That's why I would suggest you learn some things yourself, and then you ask questions from that perspective, because you're trying to learn things yourself. That way you're trying to learn along the path that you're going. You understand? Some people throw in advice and it has nothing to do with you, and you don't want that. So we're going to talk about why it's essential, who to get the advice from, how to take the advice, and consequences if you choose not to go get advice.
So tell me something. Why is taking advice so vital? Someone might say, well, Daryl, come on, you got to take advice. How many people do you know that don't? So, no, it's not that simple, because that means you have to admit that you don't know it. Especially with educated people, it seems to be very hard for them to actually ask for help because they have to figure it out themselves. I'm one who likes to figure out things myself, but I also know when I need help now. But it wasn't always like that. Think about this. Had I taken even 10% of the advice that was ever given to me, I promise you I would not have been homeless for that. I knew everything, right? Yeah, I'm a really smart guy, but dude, there is no such thing as a person that's ever been successful that didn't get advice from someone. The most successful people that have ever lived, whatever task they were doing, they got advice from somebody. It's hard, you have to humble yourselves, but it's necessary. The entire point of venting was to get out the stuff that now your house is empty. Once you get it off your chest, it's empty. Well, the only thing that's going to be left is you're going to end up having more negative thoughts. So instead of having an empty head with the possibility of having more negative thoughts, fill your head with knowledge. Fill your head with things that can help you move forward. That's why this is essential. You can't do anything without taking advice. That's how I've learned how to be different. That's how I've learned how to do things different. Do you understand?
So how do you take advice? How is it done? What process do you do to decide how you're going to take that advice? That literally is up to you. But let me give you some tips. A person that you're getting advice from has to be understanding it. You know, it would be better if everyone had what I have, which is to say that I just so happen to have someone who listens to me and also gives me advice. However, that's not everybody's situation, like I said last time. So you have to ask questions. Family's always good to get advice from because you know them. Friends as well, co-workers, even random people. Sometimes random people on the street can be there at the right moment. But in reality, there is kind of a way you can know. If a person has been around you for a while, it doesn't always have to be family. In fact, some people, in the case of myself, aren't around family, so they don't know me anymore. I can't get advice from them about my life now. So then what do? Some people are close to the family, so then that's great people to get advice from because they'll always have an answer for you. That doesn't mean you have to take the advice. That's not advised in my opinion, but you can at least ask. Asking questions. Have you gone through this? What is your opinion of this? What's your opinion of that? Gleaning information off of everyone is always good. In the end, it's going to have to be a test run. Trust is time, consistency, and repetition. And that's with everyone, family included. So if you can't trust their advice, don't ask for advice from them. You know they're not going to give you good advice. It's a time thing, like I said. And how you do it is a process. It's feeling out things at first. Especially, like I said, with mental illness, we don't trust anyone a lot of times. And so we're feeling out, can I trust you? We'll give you little things that are secrets of ours, and we'll try to test you sometimes. I know I do it all the time. I test people all the time. Can I trust you? So I'll tell them a secret. Do I ever hear that secret from anyone else? If I don't, hey, look at that, you passed your first test. And I have to be that careful because in the past, my decision making was bad. So I trusted the wrong people. So just go through a process, come up with a process in your head, ask questions, and start trying to ask for advice. But the best person that you can get advice from, to be honest, is going to be a person who knows your situation, knows what you're going through, knows what you've been through, and wants to help you, because they're going to be willing to go farther than other people. Does that make sense? And it's so important. So who you choose matters, or who you have chosen. In my case, like I said, I have a circle of friends that I can trust now. That was not the case before, but this was a time thing. It was over time I got this. So think about that.
So let me ask you a question. Who do you take advice from? Your mother, your father, your family, your friends, your coworkers? I would say all and none is the answer. It's the idea of, it's going to be someone who has experience, who knows what they're talking about, especially depending on what you're talking about. So for example, you're not going to go to a rich person and ask them about homelessness. It's not real smart. You're not going to get good advice from them. Equally so, you're not going to go to a homeless person and ask them how to get rich. Not if you're smart. Like I said, it's got to be someone who you trust. And therein lies the problem. When you have mental illness, you don't trust anyone. Most people that I've ever met that have a mental illness, that have bipolar disorder, those sorts of things, they don't trust a single soul. Trust is based upon time, consistency, and repetition, which means that over a certain period of time, that person has to have given you advice that you have followed and that has worked for you over a period of time, not just one time. Just because a person gives you advice one time doesn't mean they know what they're going to do the second time. So it takes time to build that trust with that person. So this is a time thing. Now, depending on what you're talking about, depending on what subject you're talking about, but in this particular case, we're talking about mental illness. We're talking about problems, real issues. But even if you're not talking about real serious issues, it's still going to be the same advice. You glean advice from everything already, by the way. You glean from every person that you ever meet, honestly. So take, for example, me. I didn't listen to my mother while she was alive. A lot of what I'm doing here comes from her. I finally listened. I finally remembered what she's told me, and I've been applying it over and over again. So I know her stuff works. So even though she's dead now, I trust my mother. Some people don't have that. So then you have to trust someone else. You have to get close to someone else, someone that you know is successful, that is happy or whatever it is, or that you know has a mental illness that has gotten through it. Now that answer is simple, and it's also difficult because you have to find the person or people. Now I surround myself with a group of people that all give good advice in their own ways, and all of them really listen in a lot of ways. So in many ways, I got lots of advisors and lots of people to vent to. I built that over time. At first, it was very lonely. And before I met Sophia, I was nothing. I was a dead man walking. I didn't trust anyone, and the people that I was trusting weren't good people. Then you wonder why I went awry. Because every time I would ask for advice, it would be the wrong advice. That's another thing you have to add into this, that also, even if it is good advice, maybe it doesn't necessarily apply to you. You have to work it into the way you think, the way your life is. So you have to know that maybe you tell them that, oh, that doesn't quite work for me. Okay, let's adjust it. And then you have a conversation back and forth so that it's good for you. There's nothing worse than getting advice from somebody, good advice, and you say, it doesn't work. Not for me. You got to adjust things. Maybe they can come up with a different type of plan, but similar in concept that works with you.
So what are the consequences to not taking advice? Well, for one thing, you're not going to get the answer to the questions you need. Now, there is such thing as bad advice, and you have to reject that, because you cannot take advice in which you know you're either not going to complete it at the moment, or that it's not good for you, that you doesn't fit your personality, right? So check this out. Just rejecting your advice out of hand, all that's going to get you is not the answers. Simple as that. You're going to have no progress for sure, because again, you're doing that whole thing of over and over and over again, active insanity. You're doing the same actions over and over again. Truly, it is hard to decipher what kind of advice you should be taking. What is the answer to your question? Maybe it's multiple people that you get it from. Maybe it's a combination of things. You have to test these things out. That's the hardest part, I think, about all this, is when you take advice, you're going to get all these Mr. Know-it-alls, and they will think that they know everything. And then when you don't try and follow their advice, they're going to think you're not changing. It's not true. You're trying to find out the answers. Now, the harder the decision, the more people you're going to need on your particular answer that you need. And that's the thing you have to understand. But the truth is, like I discussed earlier, it's very hard for people like me to trust people. So then who do you take advice from? Well, we answered that. It's got to be someone you trust. Well, then that means if you trust them, not just with your life, not just with your situation, but with the answers that you need, just follow their advice and see how it goes. You never know what happened. And eventually you'll be able to do these things on your own, because in the end, it is about you. It's not about them. It's about you taking that advice and trusting that person. This is all about trust. This whole putting your whole life in someone else's hands for the moment until you can get it under control yourself. Well, finding the answers is the same way. So finding the answers, you have to sift through a lot of people's opinions. A lot of people think, well, I've done this. Have you done this though? What if I had this situation happen? Ask them questions. Be curious. Don't just reject advice out of hand, because there are real consequences. Now, they're not as serious a consequences as venting and not venting, you know. You're not going to go around having a murderous rage at some point where nobody's expecting it. However, you're not going to know what to do in the moment in which you do it. Part of the biggest thing about getting advice from people is the fear of what if they're wrong? What if it doesn't work? What are you going to do then? Well, you just go back and get some more advice from somebody. Maybe that person didn't know at the moment what to do. And maybe you go back to the same person and say, well, I tried this, but this doesn't work. Maybe they explain to you, well, you didn't do this exactly right. Let me show you something. That's really what it is. It's a kind of a conversation in reality. It's not really that you're asking questions like a child. And you definitely don't want to completely put your whole life in their hands. You have to have the decision-making power. So the consequences are very simple. You're not going to find out the answer if you just reject advice out of hand. See, that's where the problem is. It's not the curiosity part. It's not the finding out the answer part. There's no such thing as a bad question. There is no such thing as a bad silence. So if you don't ask me any questions, you just assume that I'm right, I'm going to know you're not curious about anything. I may be right about a lot of stuff. How do you know that unless you ask me questions? I hate to say this to atheists, but even God in the Bible demands you to question him. He leaves that book open to be reviled by all. I kind of do the same thing. You know, I get on here and I talk about my life and I let you guys see, are you trustworthy? Am I? I'm showing you exactly how to do it. So if you don't have anyone else, just watch my videos. I try to do my best to come up with every type of scenario you can imagine. I'm very much of a thinker like that. But if I can't give you the answer, run it by a friend of yours to know you better than I do. Because I don't know almost all of you. However, I know enough that I can give decent advice now. And sometimes really good advice. But in the end, it is about your decision making. It's not about mine. You can listen to my advice or don't listen to my advice. Either believe that I've done this stuff and I'm doing this stuff, or don't. It's on you. So think about that when you start asking questions, when you're trying to be curious about your life. Okay? I hope you guys understand the importance now of being able to take advice. The whole previous thing about venting was so that you could get the crap off your chest, so that your head's not full of junk. You can't possibly listen to advice if you're full of junk in your head, if you're full of stuff in your head, or if you're self-doubting and all the stuff that happens. So think about that. So you take advice, and therefore you can glean all of the information, and you can move forward, and you can continue to move forward, and you will always know what to do, because if you have good people around you, if you have people that you can get advice from, it's just all the difference in the world, guys. And remember, go to bipolarize.net, find out what we're about, find out what we're really trying to do. Just two guys, a couple women, they're just trying to help. And remember, hit that bell for notifications so you can find out when we're coming out with the next video. Be safe when you're traveling. When you're going from here to there, when you're going to work, coming back from work, when you get there, be aware of your surroundings. You have no idea what may happen. Bad things happen sometimes, right? Be understanding of one another, not just from your perspective, but from theirs. And also be understanding of your lines. You know, you can't sometimes always help. You shouldn't feel bad about that. If you're trying to do the best you can, you're trying to do the best you can. The idea is, if you're trying to help and you're doing what you can, then you shouldn't feel bad about when you can't. Because sometimes you can't. And remember, sometimes people have a hard time coming out of the fog. Help them. Don't just let them flounder about. Let them know that you're there to pick them up. Don't support them now. I'm not talking about support. I'm talking about a hand up, not a handout, right? And remember, life is fleeting. You are not promised your next breath. Once you understand that concept, it gives you a bit more drive, as it were. And until the next video, may the Lord of Light guide you in all things. Goodbye.
Oh
you.